You know when you clean your garage, how many times you go back and look at it? We just like to see our work product. You just can't help it. You just keep going back and looking at it. Besides numbers on a statement, we didn't really have much as traders. Not that you can't feel good about or bad about what you've done.
Welcome everybody to the Warrior Podcast. I am your host, Frank Lardino. I have a special guest on today. He's a former trader, traded from 1991 to 2006. He is the author of a book called Trading with Faith. Super interesting perspective on trading and faith. Privileged to have him on. Welcome, Bill Provenzano. His badge was ZNO in the trading pit.
Hi, Frank, thanks so much. I love what you're doing here, and thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. We've had some good conversations. You have some great stuff to share. And let's start at the beginning, my friend.
Well, in the beginning, I was born in 1967 in Melrose Park, Gottlieb Hospital. If anybody remembers. Gottlieb.
Yeah, I do actually.
So, but grew up in Bellwood. Grew up in a very heavily Italian populated block in Bellwood. The neat thing about where we grew up was on our block. When you pulled in, on the left-hand side was my mom's parents lived there, my grandma and grandpa Linzini. And so our block was just sort of this one circle all the way around, and, just rows of homes of probably 15 to 20 kids our age, from my age, a couple of years younger to my oldest brother's age and a couple years older. Remember the days we used to walk to school? We would walk to school, McKinley Grammar School. We would come home for lunch from 12 to 1.
I remember those days.
Because Bozo Circus was on from 12 to 1. And then we would walk back to school. And that was I can't think of any bad experience for the years that we lived in Bellwood. Now, unfortunately, we moved out when I was in between my second and third grade. So I was, call that 7, 8 years old. And my father's parents lived in Melrose Park, literally 3 miles away. So if you went from Lake Street and 23rd going north, you had my dad's sister, my Aunt Josephine and her husband, Babe, Ralph, Babe Serpico. The next house was a 3-flat. My dad's parents lived in the middle level there. The next house was my Uncle Babe's sister, I believe, and she had a bunch of kids. And the house after that was my dad's other sister.
Awesome.
And then, so I had 4 cousins on that block. Both my dad's sisters were there. My grandparents were there. It was too far to walk, but I can't remember a Sunday growing up that we weren't at my grandma Provenzano's apartment for spaghetti dinner at 2 o'clock.
That's awesome, because I wrote down Sunday. While you were talking, I put Sunday because I wanted to ask you if you had the same tradition as me.
Yeah, it was every Sunday. Now, the interesting thing is my grandma Provenzano was, her maiden name is Blair. She was all Irish.
Oh, wow.
So, so
you could never be a made man.
That's right. So she, she made Sunday gravy, neck bones, meatballs.
Nice.
Every Sunday. And the big Tupperware bowl of salad. That was and
oh my God.
A stack of Wonder Bread.
Exactly the same.
And that sitting around on the vinyl chairs around the kitchen table. It was every Sunday that I can remember at that young age. Between my second and third grade, we moved to Downers Grove. The neighborhood was getting a little rugged, so us and virtually everybody had moved out of our block. And the neat thing about Downers Grove was, entirely different setting. Downers Grove back then was the sticks, right? So we're talking about 1976. Downers Grove. Yorktown was built, and people are like, who's building a shopping center out there? Who's going to go all the way out there? But the neat thing was, in our subdivision, now it's probably, I've since moved out, but it now is probably 300 homes. But when we moved in, 10 homes. So we move in there, and it's forest. So that, it's get home from school, get outside, and you're out in the forest, all day long, just playing with friends and doing all that fun stuff. So we had some neighbors that we got to be friends with and whatnot.
What did your dad do for a living?
He was an attorney. Yeah, he was a lawyer.
What kind of attorney?
Personal injury.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mom, back in the day, she was a secretary for a psychiatrist, interestingly enough, Dr. Steed. I remember his name. When Dr. Steed would call the house, my brothers will recognize this voice. Hello, this is Dr. Steed. Is Maria there? That's exactly how he sounded every time he called the house. So we would always just laugh about that. She was a secretary, and it was the funniest thing was watching her type, because she typed so fast. It was insane. And so every time we had a report to do, we would just sit there and we would just giggle, because it's just funny watching her type. And this is back in the day when, when if you make a mistake, it's either, gets a little white out or the
right.
But
and they were not like sensitive keyboards; they were typewriter keys that you had to slam. So.
Yeah, well, no, actually, this was when it was electric. So when you touch it, it was just, it was super fast.
Oh, okay,
they were
I
electric.
gotcha.
They were electric, but it was that ball. Remember that ball that would?
Yes.
Yeah. So once we moved to Downers Grove, she didn't work as much at the time when my folks split. Later on, and we'll get into that. She did go back to work as a secretary, but yeah. So that was, life was really it was fantastic in Bellwood. It got a little wonky when we moved to Downers Grove. You can kind of see, the ground kind of shifting on us, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit. My dad was kind of gone more often, and then by the time so we moved in there in Downers Grove, and I was going into third grade. In between my 6th and 7th grade, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. So my brother Frank is 3.5. My brother Frank born 3.5 years. My brother Tony, then 11 months later, me. Oh, wow. So we're Irish twins. So once we moved to Downers Grove, like I said, it started to get a little wonky. Like you can kind of sense the relationship from my mom and dad was kind of getting a little off. You don't have language for it back then, right? Now I can look back on it and put language to it, but when it's happening, you're not really sure how to put words to it. And so they split, they separated in between my 6th, when I was going into my 7th grade, and that's when kind of the
was it rough on you guys?
Yeah, I took it pretty badly, but it just sort of it wasn't an amicable thing. It just got ugly, and. I say that, the dial on crazy, got dialed up to about a 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then once my dad remarried and my mom remarried, and then, with the partners they chose, the crazy meter got dialed up to about 10. So, whatever financial issues there might have been before, just sort of ramped up. And once they both remarried, things really got kind of chaotic. There might be an example that comes into mind, but it's just more sort of a feeling of instability, right? Like the ground underneath you at that age, like I just felt like there was no rules in our home. My cousin, my mom's has a brother who's 11, 12 years older than her. He has a son who he didn't have anywhere to live, so he kind of moved in with us. So he was sort of acting as sort of not a father figure, but sort of like a guardian of sorts. But he was 20-some years old, so it's fun time. There really were no rules in our house because now my mom's back at work, and doing her thing, and we're just coming home from school, and there's no. It lacked structure, and so it really. And I just knew there was financial struggles going on. Just from the conversations going on, the arguments between my parents. So, money was always an issue. And then there was, then when my mom remarried, it's whatever spending proclivities they had prior, that just got ramped up. They were both extreme spenders and not, maybe that's the wrong word. It's not like they were out buying cars. It's just, they didn't manage money well.
Gotcha.
And they were in the construction business. My mom's second husband was in the construction business. So how that works is you've got to really manage money well.
Correct.
Because you've got money going out on the front end of jobs. And by the way, kudos to Jimmy Place. We were talking about this. Jimmy, you're a braver man than I am, because I don't think I can pull my curtain back that far.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy, out there. But thank you. Yes,
you pulled the curtain back and showed us things that thank you for doing that. But I'll tell you one story that'll just sort of reinforces an outsider's opinion. So when my folks had the construction business, my mom and her second husband, their office was in the house, and they had hired a bookkeeper, Joan, and Joan was there, and Joan managed the books. And at some point, Joan kind of called them out, like, you can't use business money to be doing all these other things that you're doing. Well, Joan got fired right after that. So that's no one was going to tell them, when you call out the insanity, when you say no to that's a better word. The word no is a pretty powerful word, and when you say it, it's going to get some backlash. So that was, that's going on, and my dad and his wife, and she's passed, so I don't, and I don't harbor ill will towards her, even though that she sued me at one point.
Oh boy!
So there was all of that. It's financial chaos all around me. and instability starting in my, mid late teens all the way through, what time is it now? And so that's sort of, where, you bring all that with you.
Right.
That all follows you into whatever business or life situations you find yourself in. I think because we and I were talking just before we went on that people have a proclivity towards spending and saving. And again, not to disparage Jimmy Place, but he was born with the spender. He had the spender mindset because he felt like he was going to keep rolling in. I was born with a saver mindset, and life circumstances, like we talked about, I believe only accentuate that one way or the other. So if you have a spender mentality and it's rolling in fast and hard, like in a business that we were in, it's only going to accentuate that. And if you have a saver mentality and all around you is this financial chaos and loss of homes and bankruptcies and it's only going to accentuate your saver mindset. That was my guiding path throughout my trading career.
Yeah, and we talked about this right before we started the podcast because you pulled up in a very modest car. You said is your wife's car, and you've never splurged on cars, which I love. Super successful trader, but because of this, what you saw molded you into like more reinforcing. I better be a saver because right. And I told you I was raised by Depression era people. And that save, and don't waste anything. Like you're Italian, so we didn't have salt and pepper on the table. We had a brick of cheese and a cheese grater. That was our salt and pepper.
Right.
So that cheese was wrapped in a piece of foil that was older than me because foil's expensive. It had so many wrinkles in it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm grateful that I have the save mentality and I know the prices of things and I shop around. But I'm like, man, I don't want to wait till ground beef's 99 cents a pound. I wanted to make enough money so I didn't have to worry about money or be so penny pinching. So I kind of rode the line between save and spend. But my family would look at me and says, "Oh, he spends too much money." My uncle told me one time, my oldest uncle, when I bought my first new car, "Why'd he buy a new car?" Right? Is like, are you stupid? You're supposed to buy used cars. So, so I get it. You took us through, kind of teen's childhood. How did you get through to the trading floor? Like, take me through those steps.
So once I finished high school, in my senior year of high school, I'd taken a class named a section of class was dealt with constitutional studies and stuff like that. And like I said, I don't know if I said it, but my dad's an attorney. He's retired now. But my thought was, my inclination was that I would become a lawyer. And it's not like I was super in love with the idea, but I thought, well, it certainly can be a nice living, and it certainly lends towards my abilities. So once I started high school, once I graduated high school, my oldest brother Frank said, start taking courses right away at College of DuPage. Start taking summer school, just get your basics out of the way. And I started, layering in criminal justice classes because criminal justice was the offering at College of DuPage. And it wasn't like, so it was the closest thing I could get. So as we were doing that, a couple of my brothers and I, like I said, my parents did ultimately divorce, but my brothers and I, every Wednesday and weekend, would go and clean my dad's office in Melrose Park. He had an office at Lake and I think it was 15th. So we would go there every Wednesday, clean the office, and then afterwards we would go out. And then on Saturdays, and like I said, two brothers. So if only two of us can go or one of us could go, whatever it was, some combination of us would go, and that'd be a chance to go, get that done, and then hang out with our dad afterwards. And then on Saturdays we would do the same thing, and we would go to the Melrose Park Civic Center, or we would go get a bite to eat, whatever it was. And one Saturday, it was probably I graduated high school in '85, so I'm gonna guess this is probably 1986ish, right around there. I was already at COD for a year, and we were at breakfast, and my dad said, "Look, there's a guy in the office. There's another attorney in the office, Ron Mentone. He's got a brother named Danny Mentone. He trades S&Ps, and I don't know what he does, but he seems to do pretty well. You guys should go meet him." We're like, no idea what you're talking about. But okay, so a couple phone calls, couple of appointments here or there, so we finally make our way to the Merc. My brothers and I drive down there, and I'm sure we drove down there. And if you remember the Merc, you walk in the lobby, and first of all, it's a sight we've never seen before, right? These colored jackets, people standing outside smoking away.
It's a whole new world. It's like you're in an alien world.
Yeah, it's like this. I'm like, I don't really know what this is all about. And if you remember, when you walked in the front doors off of Wacker, far right was the elevator bank that went up to the fourth floor visitors gallery. So, we were told, go to the fourth floor visitors gallery. When you get there, pick up the phone, call so-and-so. So we walk over, find the visitors gallery, and you open up. And if you can remember, when the doors open up, there were microphones on the trading floor that would pump sound into the visitors gallery. And the visitors gallery was dark. They kept it dark purposely. So the doors open in the elevator, we kind of walk out and we turn like, what's that? So we start walking towards the glass. And the sound's getting louder and louder. I remember this was the lower trading floor. Remember that? So the upper trading floor wasn't open yet, and the visitors gallery was right on top of the S&P.
Yes, I remember.
So I'm walking up, and I'm like, I don't know what in the world this is, but I think this is where we need to be. There was just something in me that just I think this is where we need to be. And we're just watching. We're waiting for. Actually, we're waiting for Danny Mentone, who's an S&P trader, to come up.
Is he relation to Donnie Mentone?
Yes, it's his cousin.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's his cousin. Because Ronnie Mentone worked in my dad's office. That's Donnie Mentone's brother, cousin. Yeah, Danny Mentone comes up. Trading. I remember this is when trading cards. There were no dupes back then. And he's explaining. We're like, huh?
It's going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, up here. It's not. That's not even touching her. It's way up here. Again, he leaves, and then the next thing is we're supposed to meet with somebody else to talk about possibly getting a job. And I just remember saying to my brothers, and this was an attitude that I've held throughout. I said, look at those guys down there. We're at least as smart as them. I know who we are. I know we're hard workers. We're well liked. We're at least as smart as them. So whatever they're doing, we can get this job. So it turns out that my oldest brother, Frank, and myself got jobs as runners. And my middle brother, Tony, was working construction at the time. He's like, no, I'm going to just stay in the construction business. And he did well there. So Frank and I both got jobs as runners on the floor for it was Collins back then. Ultimately became Rosenthal Collins.
Is that 800?
800. Yeah. And then when it was Rosenthal, did the number change? I think it was 800 for sure.
Yeah.
When it was Collins.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we both got jobs at the meat desk for Collins. And then within a pretty short period of time, we both became phone clerks. In a North Porch period of time, he and I both became desk managers, just sort of reinforcing, not in a braggadocio kind of way, but just I just know we're going to show up. We're going to work. We're going to be on time. We're going to be okay. We'll be the ones that rise to the top here.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were in the meats. Who would be the deck holders in the cattle? Was it JoJo and?
No. It was in the cattle was Lion. Lion is.
I remember the badge.
Yeah, Lion. An older guy, older gentleman. His name evades me, but his badge was Lion.
He was the deck holder for the.
Oh no, I'm sorry, he wasn't the deck holder. He was the filling broker. I don't remember who the deck holder was. Yeah, I don't remember for sure who the deck holder was.
Because I ran for Refco and we ran orders into Dean Kalenis.
Okay, no,
so yeah. JoJo was his main clerk.
Yeah,
and JoJo's a legend. We talk about him all the time. But I was just curious.
Yeah.
So
Lion was the filling broker, and I can't remember his deck holder. But do you remember? Well, Terrence Duffy at the time was a filling broker in the Hogs, and he had two deck holders, one for the buy, one for the sell side, and Jennifer, who was now his wife. Mm-hmm. And then the other guy, I can't think of his name. He was a ball buster.
Yeah.
I think my buddy, I met a good friend of mine. So on the trading floor, within a couple of months, a guy named Pete Casano came to work on the floor, and he and I to this day we're still great friends. He went to work for his father's construction company, but I think Pete was the only guy that got this guy to smile one time, because Pete could give it back, and he could be really funny. And all that to say, the floor was just filled with characters. It was just one character after another.
And you're a runner, right? And you're coming from being a civilian to this alien environment. You realize, like on your first day, I got to grow thick skin here, because these people are ball busters. Like they're all over, they're all around, and they're looking at you like a piece of meat, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like it is survival of the fittest. Yeah. And they're testing you out as soon as you walk on the floor.
Yeah.
Right.
It was exactly that. Now, at the time, so I'm 6 foot 205 pounds now. At the time, I was 6 foot 220 some odd pounds. So I was a little bigger back then. Matter of fact, they gave me the nickname Tank because nobody did. So I was Tank. So I remember one time there was there was a fill this was in the Hogs, and there was a fill that was in question because it was a stop, and so I brought in time and sales, and I'm questioning it to the broker's clerk, and he's talking to the broker, and the broker tells me, tell him to go F himself. And the guy, I think the kid turns and says, I think maybe you should tell him yourself. So he looks at me, and I'm like, yeah, what am I going to fight a guy? But,
Right.
it was just funny that I remember that kind of like, yeah, maybe you should turn around and tell him yourself.
That's funny.
So from there, my brother and I learned about the mid-am. And the mid-am was like the E-mini, was the out-one-out-crave version of E-minis today. So within the mid-am, so within the Board of Trade, there was a corridor in the Board of Trade that connected like the grain room to the bond room. There was this corridor, and in that corridor were two good-sized pits. And in one of them, they traded T-bond futures as well as currency futures. And then the other one, they traded soybean futures as well as then some of the other grains. But the soybeans and the T-bond futures, they were called the minis. They were half-size contracts, and they were traded via open outcry, and they were fungible with the big room. So if you bought one big bond in the big room, you can offset it with two E-minis.
Gotcha.
So there was some of that going on. They were called the changer phone. There was a guy on the phone that if there was ever discrepancy or an arbitrage opportunity,
Gotcha.
they would do that. So that was sort of the training grounds. That was the minor leagues, and seat there was like about $7,000, and you only needed about maybe some $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 in your account to start. So we were talking about this. So I had dropped out of college to go to work at the Merck. So it was the summer of, I think, '86. So I'd got about a year or so of college under my belt, and I took this job. And I didn't really, like, my dad didn't really say anything to me about, at that time, it was just like, oh yeah, go to work there. And about a year or so later, working at the Merck, we were out to dinner with my dad, and he says to me, when are you going to finish college? And I'm like, I'm not finishing college. Like, oh no, that wasn't a question. You're going to finish college. So in between, we worked out a conversation where he's like, okay, look, I'll help you to start at the mid-am, finish college, and we'll talk about you ultimately going over to the Merck. So that was the plan, and I started training at the mid-am, and I would take the train down in the morning. Depending on what time I had classes, I would either go straight to UIC, or I'd go to the mid-am first to trade, throw my bags on me, walk to UIC, take the classes, and depending on the time of day, go back to the mid-am and trade. And back then they were on quarters. So I remember I had 2 full years of college to finish. So I was able to finish 2 years at UIC at COD, and I had to take. I would have had 8 quarters to finish, but I just figured out, well, let's see, if I go summer quarters. Let's see, the normal quarter was 12 weeks. Summer quarters were only 10. So if I pack on like electives, like weightlifting and art in summer quarter, I can just ratchet up that. So basically, I went to UIC for 6 quarters straight, and just packed in as many courses as I could. Was on the dean's list because as I said to one of my professors, we were talking about taking a course pass fail. I said, I don't know how to study for a C. Right? You can take a course pass fail, but how do you take a course and how do you study for just a C? You study for the A, and that's sort of that's my mentality. So so throughout my UIC and college career, I had 1 C. Everything else was A's and B's. So I remember the very last day. Now, the very last day of I had 1 final left, and the course was the study of bureaucracies. It was as boring as you think it was, and worse. And I had to go take this last final exam. So I went to mid-am in the morning, traded a little bit, went to UIC, took the final exam, walked back, said, I'm a college graduate. I'm done. And nobody was impressed. What
did you get to see in? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, honestly I think it was a geography class.
Okay,
it was like geography, I don't know, geography.
Yeah, that's funny because I'm not good with geography either.
Yeah,
so.
I'll tell you my two biggest coups in college. My oldest brother Frank, sort of, again, with my parents split, sort of lack of direction. My oldest brother, Frank, did a nice job of sort of shepherding my other brother and I in the right direction and stuff. So, kudos to him for that.
Can I pause you on that? Are you guys still close, your brothers?
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a big deal.
Yeah, we all live within, oh God, a few miles of it. And I'll throw one more curveball at you. My brother Tony and I are married to sisters.
Oh, how about that?
So
yeah, that's crazy.
So that
keeps you guys together too, which is cool.
Exactly. So my wife is the oldest of 7.
I have 3 sons, and I've told them this many times. If you want to help perpetuate my legacy after I'm gone, it will be that you guys stick together. That's so important to me. So something good is happening with you guys that you're still tight.
Yeah.
So.
Now, admittedly, because Tony and I, with being married to sisters and being so close in age, we definitely see and talk to each other more than Frank. But I mean, certainly all 3 of us, are still in constant contact with one another.
Good.
My 2 favorite college stories were, again, following my brother Frank's lead. Like, okay, these are the courses you want to take. These are the take these. And we had this big black trunk in our house in Downers Grove, and my brothers would save all of their college papers and put them in there. So my brother Frank and both Frank and Tony had taken this. It was a psychology course, like Psychology 101. The professor was Professor Seaton, and he was a real psychologist out of California, and it was fascinating. But the problem was he would just stand there and talk, and he would just stand there and talk, and there's 3 tests and a final. I'm at the first test. It's the night before the first test. Like, I have nothing. I have like a page of notes. I didn't even bother buying the book. I have nothing. So I have this idea, like, Frank, you took that course, right? He's like, yeah. So I go through the trunk. So honestly, this is the night before the test. I go through the trunk, and I'm like, I find the file folder. Open up. It's got all 3 tests in it. I'm going to take a shot.
That's insider trading, by the way.
Like, I'm going to take a shot that he hasn't changed the test, because the test was like 25 multiple choice and 3 essays. I'm going to take a chance here, and otherwise it's, I got nothing. Walked in the next day. I was done in probably 7 minutes, and I think to myself, I can't turn this thing in right now. I've got to. It was
exactly the same test.
It was the exact same test. I'm like, I've got to wait. So I wait till somebody else turns it up, and I'm like, I can't get 100% in this test. So I changed like 3 answers. Like, I can't do that. Well, I continued to go to the course, and I never missed a single day. And it was a 7 o'clock class. And then I aced the class because I had the test.
Nice. So how did your brother do on those tests? What were his scores? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know, but I did better than him, I'll bet.
Obviously.
And my other coup was the study of bureaucracies. That course, the study of bureaucracies. This was as hard of a course as I've ever taken in college, because the professor was brutally boring. Remember Bueller?
Yep.
That was this teacher on caffeine. That's how bad this course was. It was horrible, and it was as dry of a course as you can imagine. It was a study of bureaucracies, and there were, I think, 6 tests and a final. Each test had 6 essay questions on it, in addition to like 50 multiple choice.
Oof.
And he would give you, I'm going to give you 9 essay questions. I'm going to choose one of those 6. Or of those 9, I'm going to choose 6. We're 3 tests in, and I'm not doing good. And this is a course in my major, so you've got to get I think you had to get a B or a C, because in order for it to, because it was in my major, it was in my criminal justice major. So we're 3 tests in, and I'm not doing well. And he's like, well, I went to meet him with him. He's like, nothing I can do for you. You just got to do better. So like, okay. So now I'm the next 3 tests. I mean, I'm studying hard. I'm answering all the essay questions, and I'm getting A's and B's on the last 3. And then going into the final, so the final is 150 multiple choice questions.
Oh my God.
And like 3 essay questions. So I'm like, well, I've got that thought in my mind of, this other guy didn't change the multiple choice questions. Maybe he won't. So I went and memorized every single test before, all the multiple choice questions. So 50 times. So 250 questions. I memorized all 250 of those questions, and I memorized all the essay questions. Got an A on the test. He didn't change the multiple choice questions, and he didn't come up with any new essay questions. So that was the last final of my college career.
That's part of why you were a successful trader, because you talk about systems and coming up with trading plans. Well, that was a plan. It occurred to you like, hey, maybe he's going to ask the same questions. So that was that's resourceful. Your brother's thing was just, that was a good hack. And then, but you had to think about it, right? Hey, maybe the papers are there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Awesome. So you got a degree and you're like, okay, big deal, right?
Yeah. So all it meant to me was, okay, now I can move on to the Merc. So when I traded bonds at the Mid-Am, the bonds typically have much bigger ranges, and I wanted to go trade Eurodollars at the Merc. We've talked about Kip Maring, my friend Kip.
Great guy. Hi, Kip.
I met Kip. Kip used to work at the Collins meat desk. So I met Kip on day one, and he and I have been friends ever since. Like I said, we just had a coffee the other day. So he and I have been friends all along. Kip introduced me to Rob. Well, Kip and my oldest brother Frank introduced me to Rob Pisa. ESA was his badge, and
ESA and ESA, the brothers. I know them well.
Brothers, and two of the most disciplined traders ever.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
When I became a pit clerk, my broker, he stood right behind those guys.
Okay.
So they were on all of our cards.
Yeah.
So I knew them well. David had the Buffon bubble, and Bobby had the Ferrari, or did
you're exactly right.
Yep.
And Dave always had the big Rolex watch with the diamonds on it.
And those guys were very disciplined,
extraordinarily disciplined. And Rob and they both Rob definitely liked to play hockey. My oldest brother Frank played hockey and through college. He got a scholarship to play hockey.
Let me pause you right there. I just got off the phone with Peter Fazano, and I told him you were coming here, and he goes, Bill Provenzano. He goes, I played with hockey with Frank. Is that his brother? That was your brother?
That's my brother.
Okay, he said to mention that.
So my brother Frank played hockey, from all the way through college. Like I said, he had a scholarship at UIC to play there. He also played baseball there. Had a scholarship as well. In fact, I'll brag on him a little bit. Frank tied the NCAA record for most consecutive home runs in a game. He had 4. And he said his 5th at bat, it went foul.
Oh wow!
he would have broke the record. So he got nominated into the UIC Hall of Fame. And I think Dave Vecchione played baseball there too at that time. Like I said, my brother Frank, he was working on the floor, so he kind of got to some people knew he played hockey, so I think there was like a men's league going on, and maybe Rob had invited him to play or something like that. And Kip, I don't remember the day or the time that I met Rob Pisa, but I met Rob Pisa, and like I said, Rob was a stellar front month Eurodollar trader, and Rob just took a liking to me. He always had just a really nice relationship, and I felt like he was a bit of a mentor to me. So I always appreciated him for that. So I knew that's where I wanted to go, and the Eurodollars, like I said, they didn't have as big a swings as the bonds, and that sort of fit my personality a little more. I'm a little more of a subdued, tame guy, and I, the big fluctuations. I did okay at the Mid-Am the first year. The first year I did what everybody hopes you do. You break even. The second year I made some decent money, and then I thought, okay, I'm ready to move on. So, like I said, I think the Eurodollars kind of fit me for a lot of different reasons. Having known a couple, it's hard to go in there as an orphan, right? Having known a couple of people in there, and people that, especially, going in there, and people know that Rob knows me, just sort of it doesn't hurt, right? So that was where I ended up. So January 1991 was matter of fact, it was Martin Luther King Day, because we used to be open until noon on Martin Luther King Day. That was my first day of trading at the Merc in the Eurodollar futures. Okay,
so when you went in the pit, obviously you don't have prime real estate. So where did you stand initially?
Yeah, so remember in the first, I stood kind of I stood in the bottom. There was the broker step.
Who was the closest brokers where you were? I remember seeing you in the pit all the time, but I don't remember at a place where you were in the pit.
So it was. Think Robbie Phillips. So like Don Lamphere,
Robbie Phillips, Ezell Johnson.
Yeah, Ezell was a local by the time I started. So I think he may have. So then in front of them were like the Pisas, and then in front of them was like the row that Kip stood on, and then I was on the floor below them.
Okay, gotcha.
So I was on the bottom level. I actually quit after the first. I don't know, maybe like month or two. Like it's like this just isn't working. I wasn't losing a ton of money, but I wasn't making anything, and I just remember thinking it's not working. And I was like I said, I was maybe 2 to 3 months in, and I called the Richard Cohn, the guy that I used to lease from. Richard Cohn, he was a character. Called him up. I said, Richard, I'm going to give you my seat back, and because at the Merc, you either had to own a membership or lease a membership to trade on the floor. And Richard Cohn, and there was a list of people you can reach out to for lease. So I leased from Richard Cohn, and I called him up, and he was just grumbling, like, it's a bad, stick it out. I'm like, well, no, I'm going back to the Mid-Am, because now going back to the Mid-Am, now I'm kind of a big fish in a small pond, right? I've been trading with, not successfully, but at least in perception, I've been trading with the big guys, right? And now I'm a big fish in a small pond. So that was my plan. I was just going to go back and trade in the Mid-Am and certainly not make the living that you could at the Merc, but it would be okay. And something funny happened on the way to the Coliseum. I was about to give my seat back, and like the 2 days before that it was set to go, set to go back to Richard, I had a decent day, not a killer day, but like a decent day, a couple $1,000 or something. And then the next day I had another decent day. I'm like, okay, well, Richard had already turned around and leased that seat to somebody else, and I think I was paying like $3,500 a month. Now there's no seats on the lease list, and I'm calling around like crazy. So the next one I find is for $5,000 a month. I'm like, okay, well, got to do what I got to do, and I was able to resecure another seat and go back on the floor. And
what kind of size are you trading at this time?
25 lots. When brokers are filling stuff back then, it's 50, 50, 50, 25, 25, 25. They're sprinkling the infield, and the bigger stuff staying close to home,
right?
And the smaller stuff trickling its way down. And of course, I'm frustrated that I'm not getting the stuff that I'm not getting stuff.
And I want to explain something to people at home. When you new trader comes in the pit, he's got to go all the way at the bottom, because guys are established themselves, and the guys who trade bigger, they eventually move up, like the pit shape, like Coliseum. So Bill's the new trader. He's in the bottom of the pit, the furthest away from the brokers who are putting the volume into the pit. So he's not getting a lion's share of trade. So on top of, everything, he's down at the bottom and he's trading small. So the trades to get to him, it's like he's the last resorter. He's getting the bottom of the barrel stuff, correct?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So let me kind of go back to the Mid-Am, because something that happened at the Mid-Am influenced some in a way that I traded at the Merc. Unemployment was a big deal.
Every first Friday of the month at 7:30.
Yep, it impacted the interest rate markets in a spectacular way. So I noticed, and I didn't know this going into it, but being in the pit at the Mid-Am, unemployment, you kind of brace yourself. And I noticed time again, so month after month after month, that the first move was extreme and it would snap back fast. So the first move was always extreme, and nobody really did anything about it. They just, it just happened. So 2 or 3 unemployments in, I tell myself, I don't care what the first move is. Once it happens, I'm taking the other side. And I remember there was a trader named, his badge was UNO. This is in the Mid-Am. UNO, his name was Peter. Tall Greek kid. And he would always just seem to be the last one to, if the market went down, it's like he was the last one to sell. So I say that, but even though it didn't, what the trade I'm about to describe didn't involve him, but I always saw he's like the indicator. He's like the indicator for the top or the bottom. Unemployment number comes out. Matter of fact, here, to make the story even better, it's my oldest brother Frank's wedding day. And it's Friday employment. He's getting married. I'm like, we're going to work.
Right.
So, right. It's his wedding day. He's getting married on Friday. He and I, because he was trading the Mid-Am with me. We were both trading there. And so we go. Number comes out, and I don't remember what the number was. It was mildly bearish. Excuse me. Broker crossed the pit from me, and about 10 o'clock, I can picture his face. I can't think of his name. He's offering. Now, in the Mid-Am, very few people are trading 5 lots. Like a 3 lot is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So broker, like I said, crossed like at about 10 o'clock to me. He's offering. He's pushing the market down, and it's a 16 lot. So at the Merc, remember, it would be buy him or sold.
Right.
At the Board of Trade, everything was sold. So he's offering. So I sold. So I buy 16. I mean, that's like massive in the mid-am. The market screams straight up. So I buy the 16 lot.
Was that the kind of the low or close to the low, right?
It was the low, or or a tick.
Right there.
Yeah, right
gotcha.
there. So market just screams the other way. I get out, and I make like $2,700. They're about to hoist me on their shoulders. I mean, it's like in the mid-am, that's like crazy.
Right.
I took that mentality with me to the Merc. But the other thing I noticed is that on any number, whether it's CPI, PPI, and these are numbers that are a reflection of the inflation level in the market, CPI, PPI, retail sales, anything that affects market conditions. When I started trading the market, I'm like, nobody's reacting, right? These numbers coming out, and it's like, nobody's doing anything. But it's as clear as day, that's a bearish number. Why is nobody doing anything? So I kind of got to be known as the guy that was the first to react off of numbers when they came out.
Because everybody's kind of waiting for someone to make the first move, even though it's looking like it's bearish, right?
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of, that was something that I brought with me. But then what I also brought with me was, on unemployment, I'm going to take the other side. It might not always work, but it tended to work pretty well. When the market pushes to an extreme, and it's hard to quantify extreme, but it's just like, I just gonna have to wait and see and how it feels. And it's sort of, there was a broker, he would have been to your left. He was with Ernie Larson's group. Greg, I can't think of his last name. Greg, white jacket.
Wasn't Vasilica, was it?
Oh, maybe it might have been. He tended to be someone who pushed, like, because he was filling orders. So whether more likely it was stops, obviously, that he tended to be like someone I would watch. Like he would push it too far or too high, too far low or too far high.
Those are really intense observations, so that you're making. You're building patterns. Yeah. You're noticing patterns that probably other people aren't.
Yeah, and maybe they're noticing them, but they're not acting on them because, you're kind of stepping in front of a freight train. Because, if somebody's offering 200 or 300 and it's pressing lower and it's screaming and you say buy them or sold, it can cost you a lot of money. I'm seeing the number 2 and what unemployment number or whatever it might be. And if it's not, it's hard to quantify how bearish or bullish a number is. But if it's like, okay, no, but you've got to decide it fast. You've got to see it and decide it fast. And the things that I'm describing, you decide those things in a matter of literally a second, if not less. So that kind of was one of the things one of my methodologies in trading.
You had the extremes there. You were the first one to react, and then on unemployment, I'm going to sit back and wait until it crests whatever way it's going.
Well, no, not necessarily, because it's like if I miss the first one, then I'm going to try. I'll play the second one, right? If the number comes out bearish and there's nothing to sell and it's extreme, like, well, then I'm going to play that side of it.
I get you.
So there were times where I caught it, like on the number came out, and I was able to catch it, and now I'm just trying to manage out of that position.
Did you know Joe Lombardi, Dex, DEX in my pit?
Yeah. Was he?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the master at being the first one.
Okay.
I mean, the number would come out, and you'd hear his voice, and he was a little guy.
Yeah.
But he could project. He was the grandmaster in our pit of being first.
Yeah.
He knew which way it was going to go, and he started it.
Yeah. The way the Eurodollars were, like the front month, as you worked your way back, they were more specialized, right? So the front month we just traded 1 month at a time. Second month you're going to have a couple more spreaders in there. Third and fourth, of course, that's all spreading,
right?
And then the backs was so it was just like in any business, like whether you're a doctor or an accountant, you have levels of specialization. I think the same was true for Eurodollar traders. We were where we were was just sort of I'm not saying this in a disparaging way. It was the simplest. It was nice and clean, 1 month at a time.
Correct.
And then it just became the degree of complexity increased as you worked way back. And I think if you sort of took a bell curve of like average income, I think that the average income reflects also the specialization as you work your way back, right? So the average income in the front is whatever it is, X. I'm not going to put a number on it. In the second month, the average income, the bell curve average income was probably X times 1.5. And then maybe X times 2. And then in the backs, it was X squared. They were doing crazy things way back there.
Right.
So I think that's like an interesting thing about the Eurodollars. There's just a degree of specialization as you work your way back.
That's interesting, and I don't know what the income levels were and how they fluctuated, but it seemed like the closer you got to the front month was more athleticism. Right, you had to be fast, you had to be alert. But when you get to the backbacks, they're all standing in a little circle. Right, there's not like the urgency, and they say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
I have I don't even remember what they call them when you do a whole strip of months.
Strips, strips. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll buy 25 of them strips, and it was more like we're just standing and talking. Where in the front is true athleticism. You're pushing, you're shoving, you're yelling, you're screaming. So different specialization, like you said.
That's not to say that it didn't happen back then, because I'm sure at times it was chaotic and hectic. The Eurodollars just suited my style of trading. Some of my favorite days were like 7-tick ranges. Those were some of my favorite days because there tended to be more follow through. So if you can get the edge on a 50, 100, 200, whatever it might be, whatever you decide it is, you get the edge or you build the edge. Like, I think it's turning and you capture the edge. On the smaller trading range days, it just tended to be more systematic and following through rather than, doing this. And so, some of my favorite trading days were the 7-8 tick trading days.
All right. So while we're on this subject here, and you touch upon this in your book about growing your size. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you started out with 25 lots, and then at your peak, like what was your comfort range in terms of the size of a position you take on?
200, 300, 400, 500. There were times I did 1,000, 2,000 lots. But having 300 or 400 on it was not uncomfortable for me. There's two different methodologies, if it's busy and it's zipping around, even if it is busy, 200. But if it's more methodical, I'm kind of just adding. I think I'm 300, 400. Mm-hmm. I was comfortable with. I always like to keep a nice big. I'd like to keep a lot in my trading account because I didn't want the psychology of a big loss.
Right.
To like I remember my first year of trading, probably about 4 months in, having lost, I think about $14,000 or $16,000 in a day. I was like, I turned just like curling up in bed, and just being like stomach pain. Like, this is just, this is horrible. And it was a Friday to make it worse. Now I've got to sit all weekend with this. But like with anything, as you grow in business, your numbers grow.
So I wanted to ask you about this. I never really traded. I traded a little bit in the NASDAQ, but when you're growing your size, is it a voluntary thing? Like, all right, I'm comfortable with my trading. I kind of know what I'm doing, and instead of doing quarters and 50s, I'm going to go up to 100. Or does it happen voluntarily where you're in the pit and you're bidding on a quarter? And, someone says, say 100, like a broker hits you at 100 and looks away and is like, all right, I got to take it because he's looked away. Yeah. Which way does it usually happen? Voluntarily or involuntarily?
I can answer how it happened for me. I would have conversations with myself ahead of time. I remember having conversations with myself. Okay, the market's, if the market turns here and I'm looking at a broker and there's a turn and he's offering 100, 200, whatever the number might be, I'm going to hit him on 100. Like I would converse with myself ahead of time, and like I said, the pace of the Eurodollar trade allowed me to do that, to have that conversation with myself. I'll just say this because this was probably the biggest conversation I've ever had with myself in the pit. It was an unemployment. Mike Fay stood like if I could touch, I could touch him right here. It's unemployment, and there's about 30 seconds to go to the number, and he's bidding on a 2,000 lot. So I'm having a conversation with myself. So on my cards, I would write down what the number's expected to be, what the previous number was. I would write down, where I'm buying it above this. If unemployment comes out here, I'm writing the numbers down on my card. So I'm looking and I'm having a conversation with myself. How many of these am I going to hit them on if the number's bearish? And I write down so it was non-farm payroll was the number we would look for, not considered the unemployment rate. So non-farm payroll. So I would write down if it's above this, non-farm payroll above this, I'm going to sell some, but I don't know I'm asking myself, am I going to hit them on 500,000? Am I going to hit them on, like, you know what? If it's above this, I'm hitting them on all of them. Comes out, sold. So I hit them on 2,000. So I'm saying all that because it's like the market allowed me, the pace of the market allowed me to have these conversations with myself. So,
And just to pause you on that before you tell me the outcome of the trade, people don't understand. You're watching the clock. The number comes out at like 7:30 and 0 seconds. So we got a big clock on the wall with the seconds ticking down, and you're making these calculations. They're going through your head at light speed. You're not just sitting there scratching your head. You're like this stuff's happening like as fast as you can think, and you're getting an adrenaline dump, right? Because you're getting ready. You get that anxious feeling. It's happening very rapidly. This is stress, right?
Yeah, he was showing the bid probably 60 seconds before the number came out. So, I had plenty of time to talk myself out of it. I kind of talked myself into it. I think I'm answering your question. Does your growth just happen, or do you talk, and in this case, these were conversations I would have with myself to kind of force myself to take bigger numbers. I remember the first time I took 100 lot. It was like I had a conversation with myself, like you're going to do 100 here, and then then 1,000 lot. Like, no, you're going to take all 1,000 of these. If such as happens, if the market turns, you're taking all of them. Just say sold.
What happened with the 2,000 lot?
If I recall, the price was maybe 12. The last two digits were 12. I don't remember the handle. And I see sold, and it's just like crickets. It's like
bad feeling.
I'm like, and
now everybody's looking at you.
Yeah,
because they know you just.
Yeah, that's kind of the downside of it. So you're kind of feeling that, and I started. Sure, so like 11 offer comes in, so I start pulling some in. At that time, we're trading half ticks, so it's 11 half offer, 11 offer, I pull some in, 10 and a half offer, 10 offer, I pull some more in, and I just kind of between 9 and 10 and 10 and a half, I just kind of buy the rest in.
So you did good.
I did good, but here's the funny part: my clerk Nikki never showed up on time. So I'm like, Nick, I'm screaming.
Yeah, you didn't know where you were, flat or not.
Yeah, my count is way off. And, as often as it doesn't work this in your favor 99 times out of 100, but I end up overbuying like 100 and change, and the market had gone back up to like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's never going to happen again.
Right.
So I might as well enjoy this one. That's sort of an answer to the question, how did your size grow? For me, it was I just had conversations with myself, and like, no, you're going to do this.
One of the difficulties in trading is our ego, and this is in many books. We have a thing in our brain where we don't like to be wrong, and it's hard for people to admit they're wrong, and hard for people to say they're sorry. Mm-hmm. So we tend to, when we put a trade on and it's a winner, like we want to lock in that we were right. So we will have a tendency to get out of the winner quicker because that makes us correct. And then when we put on a losing trade, we'll hold on to it too long because we so badly want to be right. We want to wait for it to turn around.
Right.
So we tend to ride the losers longer than the winners, correct? And that's one of the things that makes trading really hard.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that 1,000 times. I've done that 1,000 times. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, that's spot
on. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the book because your book relates faith in trading, but I'd like to tap into when did your faith start, and take me a little bit through that, because I had faith for most of my life. Then I became a skeptic, and until recent times, and this is a product of my wife passing away, the restoration of faith. So take me through your journey of faith.
Sure. We grew up in a Catholic home, as you would expect, Italian Catholic. We went to Mass on Sundays, and we went out to breakfast afterwards. That continued all the way through probably like 5th or 6th grade. And, parents split, and this sort of speaks to the uneasiness, the shakiness of the ground you walk on. You take that out of your life. And I at 8 o'clock, I did enjoy going to Mass, but, when at 9 o'clock when it was over, I'm like, I'm glad we went. Like you just felt like there was a good feeling afterwards. And I always believed in God, and I believe that I prayed with some regularity. But like I said, the ground started to shift when my parents separated, and those kind of things were kind of set to the side. But I had a conversation with somebody, and if I offend people with this, all I can do is just point you to the Bible. He said to me, I think you're going to hell, and I said, well, why? What did I do now? Because my perception was heaven or hell was based on how good or how bad you were, and that's what a lot of people's perception is. Whereas the Bible teaches, well, that's not. There's you've heard the phrase 1,000 times, Christ died for your sin in the Catholic Church. You've heard it maybe too many times without really recognizing what sort of like personalizing that, right? So I got to a point and with some guidance and with some reading and whatnot that and this would be right around I would say 8th grade, 9th grade, something like that, freshman year of school, where I was introduced to the concept that, well, no, Jesus Christ came, God's Son. He died on the cross for my sins, and I can have a relationship with him. And it can't be my parents' relationship with him. It can't be, think if your parents, or anybody, your friend has a relationship with somebody, you might know that person, you know where they live, but you don't have a relationship with them. So faith became a relationship thing, and I just came to a point in time. There wasn't like a specific day. I just came to a point in time where that got settled in my heart that Jesus is God's Son. He died for my sins. I receive that, and I can't earn it. It's lest no man should boast. It's not by works. Works don't get you into heaven. It's your relationship with Jesus Christ that then produces good works. And I've messed that up 1,000 ways and 1,000 times. But works don't buy your way in, lest no man should boast. But works should be an outpouring of the faith, your new faith, and a way that you can demonstrate your love for God. Love God, love people. Those are the two commands that supersede all the other ones. Love God, love people.
Awesome. So I wanted to get a little background on that. And in your book, you tell a story about a 2-lot versus a 7-lot trade and blaming God, right? So what happens there?
Your previous episode, Triple T, he talks about blaming, accepting responsibility for things. And I'll tell that story because it's an interesting story. It was my first profitable month as a trader. It stands out so clear. I was up like $790 some going into the last day of trading for the month.
And this will be your first profitable month.
First profitable month as a trader at the Mid-Am. It's a line that I wrote that I keep. It was a nice turn of phrase. I said $797 wasn't enough to sustain my lifestyle, but on that day it was enough to sustain my dreams.
I love that. I remember reading that. Yes.
So that really resonated. That I feel like somebody else wrote it. And my game plan was, look, I'm playing it close to the vest. Let's get through the day. And markets called open higher. I'm like, okay, I'm only going to trade 1s and 2 lots. Keep it tight. Keep the stops tight. And just get out of this month as a winner. Bell rings, market's bidding up. It's not not like crazy high, but broker across the way and one over. He's bidding on a 7-lot. I say sold. I'm like, what did I just do? Why did I just sell a 7-lot? So I'm already violating my rules. And now it's tick, tick, tick. Hold it like you just talked about. I don't want to admit I'm wrong. I don't want to tick, tick, tick. That 797 is gone plus them some. I get out. I'm like, and I leave the floor. I'm like, and it was all blame. God, how can you pull the rug out from underneath me? How can you give me so much hope that I'm going to make it as a trader and then pull the rug out from underneath me? That was, I remember vividly saying that. And when people say God spoke to me, I can only say the way it means to me. There's not an audible voice. It's just sort of, the interior, something coming from inside you saying, yeah, okay, enough. I didn't do anything to you. This is nobody. This is the phrase that I wrote down. I'm not going to shift the world's economies because you can't follow your rules. I wrote that down. Like that's what, like that.
I love that.
Like that's what came to my mind. Like, okay, I wrote that down. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. This was all me. This was my doing. I accept it and back to work the next day.
So would that be a pivot point for you in your mindset? Was that the fact that I remember all of the factors of it so vividly. It's absolutely sort of a turning point in my life. Yeah. Because I've had plenty of people on here who their blame of God brought them to a a dark point that they bounced off of. Like that was it.
Okay.
Right. So I had a gentleman on here named Jose Santiago, and his grandfather died when he was a boy, and he got mad at God. These are his words. So he joined a street gang. So blaming God is never a good thing. Blaming anything outside of ourselves is never a good thing. You're become a disciplined trader, and your faith is increasing. And I wrote this in my journal when I was a boy. We have to be careful what we pray for, because God is judging us by that. Like praying like, oh, I hope I get the maximum bonus. God sees all suffering in the world. Right. And I think when we pray for stuff like that, I don't think he looks on that favorably. So now you're a disciplined trader, and you're very spiritual and faithful. Are any of your prayers related to your trades?
Yes, and this is sort of how, and it's funny that because I kind of did take this with me into prayer, because I wanted my trading to sort of reflect something bigger than making dollars. Like and in the same way, sort of that impression on my heart about I'm not going to shift world economies because you're making a bad decision. I just sort of one day out of prayer was born something called what I call trading account giving goals. That I remember setting a dollar goal for the year, like I wanted to make this much money for the course of the year. But a lot of that is going to be dependent on the economy. Is our interest rates going to be going up, going down, because all that in fact impacts the Eurodollar markets. So I just sort of ruminating on this, praying over it, I just came up with this thing called trading account giving goals, that when my trading account reached a certain dollar amount, I would give away some portion of that, and I would have it predetermined. So I felt like that was a good merger of ambition and contentment. That my ambition is to get my trading account to this number, and I'm going to be excited to give away some portion of that, some predetermined portion of that, as a result of it.
That's pretty cool. So you would set a dollar amount aside, and then where did the dollars go as examples?
So to various ministries, or to feed to World Vision. So to Christian-centered ministries usually, and usually it was World Vision was one where, because I really liked World Vision. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but World Vision, I really liked what they did, because World Vision would go into a community, typically overseas, and they would start by, let's dig a well. So get clean water, so that all the people aren't going 10, 20 miles to get clean water. So let's start there. So now these people have free time. Let's build a school. So now in the school, you're educating the children. Let's teach the adults, farming, seed management, all that stuff. And then so now you're educating them. And then they would also have this thing called microloans, where they would, for like $100, a woman could buy a sewing machine and start up a business with a sewing machine. And so I just loved what World Vision was doing. So I just got totally behind them and their mission. And then their goal was 15 years we're out of this community, because you guys should be handling this your own. So they would just go into different communities. And, typically it was in Africa. And so I loved what they were doing. Back here at home, Feed My Starving Children was one that they would just ship truckloads of food to those areas in need. So I just got behind. So that's where a lot of it would go.
I think that's awesome, and that's kind of that's your own creation. Now, Jimmy Place brought up the fact that brokers and traders, they were generous. You go to them, hey, I got a fundraiser. Give me. They'll tell you, write me a check for $1,000 or whatever. And yes, they did do that. But given if nobody approaches these guys, a lot of them, they don't have this understanding of giving back. Like, they're not charitable unless somebody comes to them, and a lot of them did it because it brought a little bit of notoriety to them. And we're not supposed to do that, right? We're supposed to just give and
do not let the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
I think that's phenomenal. You had mentioned just before, and it's in your book, contentment versus ambition, and you talk about that. And this is something that I personally have to reflect on all the time, because as I get older, my mindset gets better and better. We both have a chapter in our book about gratitude, And the more grateful you are, the more content you are, right? And sometimes I wonder, does the contentment dilute the ambition? For myself, I worry about that because like I have a podcast and I want the podcast to go, get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if it doesn't, my contentment side says, and Colin Palmer said this in his podcast, he said, it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness in the pursuit. So I'm always questioning myself. I'm happy that I can embrace contentment all the time, but is it diluting my ambition? And how do you look at that?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think it's your previous podcast host, Triple T. He touched on this a little bit, and I'm glad I listened to that before yesterday. Yeah, you do not have to set aside ambition to be content. It's a reframing. So contentment is here and now. Ambition is there and then. Right? So think about that. So contentment is here and now. You are really focused on the here and now. What do I have right now? I'm grateful for the here and now. And ambition, without reframing it, if you don't reframe it, is the there and then. But I want that, and I want that, and I want that. I've just reframed it. And gratitude is the arc that.
Oh man, what a beautiful vision that is.
And gratitude is the arc that allows you to bring that in. So I express gratitude for my ambition. And to me, some people, whoever you may think, for me, it's God. Thank you, God, for the ambition you have placed on my heart. Thank you for the work ethic. Thank you for my skills. Thank you for my abilities. I want to express all of these things, and I want to represent you well today. And representing God well today, to me, means carrying out the ambitions that He's placed in my heart, and being grateful for those ambitions. So gratitude to me is just sort of the circle that allows you to express contentment and ambition at the same time.
That's phenomenal. So I just want to repeat this out loud for myself because I'm going to write this down in my journal and put your name in there. So contentment is here and now. Ambition is then and there.
Unless you reframe it. Ambition is typically going to be then and there unless you reframe it, because ambition makes you, I want what's out there. But the reality is, if you really focus and are grateful for the tools that you have, those are the tools that are going to get you there, right? It's just reframing it. It kind of speaks to motive. Like, is my motive getting that, or is my motive really being honoring with the skills and abilities that have been given me? And if I really honor those skills and abilities and carry them out in a dutiful, respectable, and responsible way, that's just the path that stuff's going to be on the path. It's just going to get collected along the way.
So to go back to the initial question, do you have prayers for trades? Not necessarily a particular trade, but just it's the system of being a trader, that I'm using my abilities that you've given me, and I'm grateful for it.
My prayers were thank you for the skills and abilities you take. Help me to be alert and aware today. Help me it wasn't like, help me to make X number of dollars today.
Right.
Once I came up with these trading account giving goals, then the framework kind of changed my prayers. Like, I believe that you've placed this goal in my heart. I believe that this is a goal that you've birthed in me, and I'm just trusting that you're going to give me the skills and ability to reach this trading account giving goal. That's how I approached it on a daily basis. Yeah,
that's super cool. I was always aware of. The more I made, the more I gave too. I didn't have a certain parameter, but my best friend at the time was my accountant, and he had a lot of traders in his pool of clients. And he says, you give pretty much more than anybody based on the percentage of what you make. And he goes, you don't have to give that much. You have the following write-offs. I don't do it for a write-off. I do it because it's my duty, right? Yeah. That's very cool. And I just want to circle back to the Catholic. Is that still your faith, or have you switched to something else?
So I would be considered non-denominational. We have a place in South Haven, Michigan, and so when I'm there, I'll often go to the Catholic Church there. And my daughter went to Catholic school, and what I taught her was, what I tried to teach her was, I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm just concerned that it becomes so routine that you lose the meaning of it.
Yes.
So when you're in Mass, just really be dialed in, because there's nothing happening there. The only thing that as an evangelical that I would have contention with is, does the host physically turn into the body of Christ, right? That's the Catholic, that's probably the biggest separation between the Catholic and a non-denominational. Was like, okay, well, the Catholics believe that, no, that physically becomes the body of Christ. I'm not sure, but to me, it represents Christ's death on my part. So I walk into it in that manner. But I enjoy going to Catholic Mass. Because I just really just dial myself in and I pay attention and I listen to the readings. My week to week is going to be a non-denominational service, but I'm not opposed to walking into a Catholic Mass.
Right. And I was born into a Catholic family too. As a boy, I found the Catholic Mass was so ritualistic, same thing every time. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't have the attention span anyway. So I didn't really care for the Mass too much, but some people, they love that. That's the part they love. They love the ritualistic way that the Mass goes. And just a sidebar, all the guys around me in the pit, they all went to Catholic school and they were heathens, man. They did, it's like it didn't take hold in them, but and I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know if you read the line in the book. They're heathens until they got a bad trade on. I said there's no atheists in foxholes and no atheists in the
I remember reading that.
No atheists in the pit that got a bad position on.
That's so funny. Also in your book, you talk about visualization. So tell me a little bit about that.
I think, in the Old Testament, I forget which book it is, that, talks about, visions given to prophets and whatnot. I don't carry it out to an extreme, but I think that there is a great benefit to visualization. Comes in two ways. Number one, you visualize the end goal or you visualize the process. So let's think of it in terms of an Olympic swimmer. Let's make it even more defined as Olympic diver. Okay, that diver can visualize the actual dive itself, rehearse the mental rehearsal of the dive, each part of it, or that diver can visualize himself on the gold medal podium receiving the medal. So there's visualization of the outcome and visualization of the process. I don't find anything particularly problematic with that in Scripture or otherwise. Matter of fact, I think there's some verses that probably encourage it, but I think it's a great practice and the benefits, the scientific benefits. Science has demonstrated time and again. There's a study on free throw shooting. So, X number of people were tested on free throw shooting improvements. So one group did the physical free throws. One group did just the visualization of the free throws, and one did both. And they both, the first two both improved, but the group that improved the best were those that did the actual physical free throws as well as the visualization. So, it can be a benefit in process-oriented activities where you want to better yourself in the process.
And there's many studies. The study I read was they made people make a fist like this X amount of times a day, and then they measured the increase in their hand strength after a defined time period, and they could, they just by making a fist, they can get 11% gain in hand strength. And then they had people who didn't do that. They closed their eyes and they visualized doing this 100 times, and they gained like 9% in hand strength, and they weren't even moving their hand. Yeah. So that's how powerful it is. And in neuroscience, they talk about manifestation, right? What you think about, you bring about. So part of it is that, right? Like the part about envisioning, I'm winning a gold medal, right? I'm standing on the podium. That's manifestation. Yeah. You will bring that stuff to you if you think about it.
I look at it just slightly differently. I don't know if it's so much as bringing it to you out of the ether as much as it is changing the way you behave towards going to that. I think one's a little more mystical and the other one's a little more practical.
True.
So
True.
I'm going to look at, no disparagement to anybody who views it any other way, I'm going to look at it more from the second, that by focusing on it, it will impact my behavior and march me towards it rather than me sort of pulling it.
I actually agree with you. Yeah. I'm more of that way as well, but a lot of people say, like the book, The Secret, kind of says that you think about it and you bring it to you. But I do believe in energy. We have trillions of cells in our body that are throwing off a real energy. It's a measurable electromagnetic field. And this is the government of our energy. And we attract like energy. So if we're positive, faithful, strong, spiritual, that energy will attract like energy, and it will repel unlike energy, right? So there's people that come in your life, and then they come and go because the energies aren't matching anymore. And Mike, this is my contention. Every human being is in a state of change. We're either progressing or regressing, but we're not staying the same. And we come together sometimes as friends, or even in a marriage or a relationship, and that like energy brought us together. But then because we're in a state of change, sometimes the energy changes and the bonding agent isn't there anymore.
Okay.
And then the relationship ends, and it's nobody's fault. We're just in a state of change, and sometimes we force ourselves to stay together, like in a marriage, for instance. We stay together because it's our vow and our code. But the relationship can become contentious because the bond isn't there anymore.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I look at it.
I never thought about it in those terms.
So that's in my book. Now, so I like what you said about the manifestation, and I agree with you there. Another thing you brought up in your book, which I failed at, and you said very important, is taking time off. Taking time off to be with your family. And tell me how that developed with you.
It just sort of happened. I just found that, going back to the Mid-Am days, I just remember that I just would take a couple of days off. I just found it refreshed me, and I always found that I bounced back better. and most times I took time off as a result of some poor trade behavior. That's almost always what precipitated me taking time off. My wife would be the first to tell you that I hated taking time off, and especially when we were at the Merc, I just did not liking taking time off. I joked with my dad one time. I said, "Yeah, I hate weekends. It keeps me out of the trading floor." But yes, I definitely found that, especially when I had, or almost exclusively, the times that I was trading poorly or making poor trading decisions, that a day or two off always served me well. It's hard to quantify why, or just sometimes just getting away from it and then coming back in. And then of course, taking time with your family, go on vacation, stuff like that, hugely important, right? I was guilty of probably not doing enough of that. We're making up for it now, I'm certain I was guilty of not doing enough family time vacations, but taking time off really for the sole focus of coming back as a better trader,
like the recharge.
Yeah.
I was a broker, not a trader, and I was a small broker, and you and I talked a little bit about the mafia element down there. And it was very competitive. And every time that I would take time off, somebody was trying to undermine my business. They were making backdoor deals and stuff like that. And that was more of a stress than, being oversold or underbought on an unemployment number.
Yeah, right.
My clerks would call me up when I'd be on vacation, and they're like, so-and-so's up there talking to our clients right now. And it was just an icky thing. So I didn't take enough time off. I took maybe 2 weeks off a year, which, in the big picture, that's probably the average for people. But I could have taken whatever amount of time I wanted off. But I was worried during those times. I don't think I fully appreciated, until I started listening to your podcast, some of the nuances of what you're talking about right there. That being overbought. An example you gave. It's before unemployment. You've got an order to buy 500,000, whatever it is, and if you don't keep your count right, and you tell your clerk 300 done when actually it's 350 now, and okay, out now, that last 50 is yours, or 100 yours, whatever that. Right.
I never, maybe I knew what happened, but I never really dwelled on it until you brought it up, and then until you just brought this up today. This is the first time I've contemplated that. Yeah, you, as a filling broker, you walk away. if I left, my spot's secure. I'm going to come back. I'm going to stand in the same spot mostly. Very rarely did somebody, ever. Nobody stole somebody's spot without there being some sort of mediation. But the fact that you leave, you might be losing customers. And I until you brought that up today, I never really contemplated that. That's a nuance that I had never thought about.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And I'm sure you had there had to be a lot of politics being a trader in there, because everybody's related to everybody. But you, like, I have this down here to talk about the contingency of Italians. You guys were like, there were little clumps of you that you grew up in the same hood, parents, this, that, and the other. The Irish guys, same thing. Yeah. The Jewish guys, same thing. We had these little cultural cliques in there,
Yeah.
So,
well, the funny thing, So Bobby DeAngelis, his dad was my dentist.
I remember his badge was RDE, right?
Yep. Frank Taddeo, his dad was mayor of Melrose Park before my cousin became mayor of Melrose Park. There were other, Italians that made their way. Matter of fact, my cousin's kid came and traded S&Ps for a while. So there was all. I think the S&Ps really, the Joey Borsellino and Louis Borsellino contingent was pretty thick. But it was much like Chicago has neighborhoods. I think like the trading floor had neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's so funny. I never looked at it that way. That is true.
Yeah. There was just sort of these clumps of ethnic groups. I mean, I used to get a kick out. So Andy Eckern, who's the Eek, stood behind me. When him and
he was a big boy, wasn't he?
He was a big boy, and he blocked a lot of. I was pissed. Hey, move! You're blocking my way. Andy, and then Jeff Allen and Walden Kistler. They'd start talking to each other like. Once they get going, they'd be talking faster and faster. Like, you might have subtitles. You can't figure out what they're saying. So, because their accents just would get thicker and thicker as they would talk.
Yeah, Jeff was a really good friend of mine, great athlete. He got me into martial arts and stuff. He was a really good fighter. I guess he just retired from being a girls basketball coach, and he had set all the records, and he just retired.
Not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising. He did really good. We will move on past trading floor and what happened after the floor. But before we do, I want to just touch on, you had talked about in your book a little bit about greed and materialism. And I just wanted to have a little conversation with what happens to all these guys that we knew that were great traders, just machines, and then they capsize after the floor.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would pick that on greed and materialism. I think I would peg it more towards, and maybe we'll come up with a word for it as we go along here. On the trading floor, the reality is we caught lightning in a bottle. The years we were there, I think we all, and I'll speak for myself, I think that we all thought we were much better than what we really were, and I'll unpack that here. So we were good traders. We were good floor traders. I think you need to define that even further. A good trader can operate on the floor or off the floor. We were good floor traders. We understood the nuances and relationships and like we talked about earlier, market fluctuations, and we all sort of picked out those things that worked well for us and were repeatable. Whether it's something as simple as getting an edge on a trade and just working the other side, or whatever it might be, some chart pattern you looked at, whatever. None of that translates. It doesn't. It really. You're not going to go anywhere with that. It kind of stays. If you can't make it work there, then it's not a translatable skill. But I think that I think the desire is so strong to keep that success going, that you stay in it too long, that it's kind of like that injured professional athlete that suddenly loses his career, that, well, you know what, I'm going to take these millions of dollars and put it into this themed restaurant that has a 5% chance of succeeding because, I'm me. I've already captured lightning in a bottle once. The odds are more skewed in my favor. I think that kind of plays part of it. I don't think it's a greed and materialism thing. I think it's more of just sort of a self-denial, like a self-delusion that I can keep this going.
Could it be also,
why can't I keep this going?
Could it be an inflated ego? Like, oh, I can do anything. And
sure. I think that definitely plays into it. I'm at a loss to totally describe exactly, but I'm not sure I would attribute it to greed and materialism. I think it's just, I think it's like a false hope. Like, okay, like I can keep this going. And then at some point, X number of dollars are gone. And this is going to be a very poor analogy, but what happens when you go to a casino with $1,000 and you've got $100 left? You're not leaving with $100. You're leaving with zero, right? You're gonna spend that. Like, why am I going to buy? And same. I think the same mentality kind of was true. That whichever trader put whatever name on it, put whatever dollars you want in his account. That if that account had 100,000 or $1 million in it, it's okay, that million's now 800, and now that 800 is down to 200. Well, guess what? You're not walking away with 200. That 200 is going to be gone, and I think that's just sort of like, I'm sure somebody can put a label on it. I'm just not sure I would label that as greed and materialism. I think it's something far more sinister and far deeper than that.
Would you account greed and materialism for guys who were doing very well and then they wanted blowing out?
Let me frame greed and materialism in the way that I'm thinking of. Greed and materialism to me is a lack of empathy for anyone who might need the help that you can give them because you want to hang on to it all to yourself. I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with wanting more stuff, wanting more or bigger. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But if you're doing it completely to the exclusion of helping anybody out along the way, that to me is how I would categorize greed and materialism. That nobody else matters. If anybody else gets hurt along the way, so be it. I'm going to get to whatever that promised land is that they think that they're going to get to. So I would really set that aside and not put that in the same category of what virtually all of us went through when the trading floor was going away. I think it was just an effort to try to just a hope to recapture or to continue going with what we had going, and a lack of recognition that, wait a second, this is not going to work, and not admitting that sooner. And so I would put, like I said, I don't think I would put that in the category of greed and materialism.
I think the greed and materialism, to me, part of that category is forgetting where you came from. So my godfather used to tell me, you show me a guy who's got 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future, and I'll show you a guy who's pissing on today, right? So, and I saw a lot of guys down on the floor. They came from, lower middle class, South Side. I saw them on their first day. They were looking around like we were looking around like, what the hell did I get myself into? Yeah. I watched them go through, trade checker to pit clerk to, trader and get a backer and become huge. Mm-hmm. And their everything just changed. Like, it's like, man, I don't even know you anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I never liked that. And I'm glad, I think I learned one of my most valuable lessons on the trading floor was money brings out the best and worst in people, and the worst is way worse than the good is good.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
And so I tell my sons, money isn't everything, but it's almost everything when you don't have enough. Because when you don't have enough, a dark cloud follows you wherever you go. Yeah. Do I have enough money to pay for gas, rent, etc.? So the object is to have enough. Mm-hmm. If you have enough, you're good. If you have more than enough, you're golden. But if you could have too much, and it upends your life.
As you were speaking, something popped into my head, and you've talked about this before. The mark had the great ability to distort reality. Mm-hmm. There was the relative and the absolute, meaning in absolute terms, like in my first year of trading. My first year of trading, I made first year trading the mark, I made just a little over $100,000. I didn't know, in absolute terms, at 23 years old, you make $10,000, whatever it might be. In absolute terms, that's phenomenal outside these four walls.
Right.
But I couldn't think of it in those terms because I wanted to know in relative terms, what did you make your first year? And it was there was a couple things at play there. Like, on the one hand, it was like I needed some metric to measure myself against. Like, is that good? Is that bad? Is that it? My motive wasn't necessarily to compare myself with somebody. It was like I want to know, could I have been better? And if I had a metric of people, or a contingent of people to compare that against, then maybe that would help me do that. It's probably a bad thing to compare yourself with anybody. That's always a bad thing.
But you have to, though.
But you have to.
You have to. How am I doing with respect to everybody in this competition?
Exactly. And that assumes it is a competition. But I wanted, as an ambitious person, I wanted to know, how am I measuring up here? What I was getting at was the absolute and the relative. So in relative terms, I outside, inside these four walls, I don't know if I'm doing good or bad. In absolute terms, of course, $100,000, $20,000.
Right.
That, of course, but the distortion is you're not thinking about outside the four walls. You're only thinking about what's going on in here, and that's the distortion. Guilty. I mean,
that's brilliant what you said, by the way.
We're all guilty of it. All of us at the Merck, I think we're guilty of it at some level. Because it just becomes distorted. My brother Frank tells a story. My brother Frank, he was at work, and somebody was running a square pool. This is where he works now, and it was like $10 a square. And he's like, $10 a square.
It's not even worth it.
We're talking. JoJo used to run the $10,000 school,
and I had $1,000 one too.
So bag of hundreds. Are they playing bag of hundreds at Jewel?
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to collect a bag, put $100, write your name on it, put it in the bag. Where else are they doing this?
And people clamoring to get.
Oh, yeah. Go get her. I need, here's two. And the funny thing was, I never played, except one time. I remember it was dead. The market was dead, and it's me and like three crickets standing around. And I had like a 25 lot on, and I forgot who it was. It was later in the day. And she was doing bag of hundreds. I'm like, you know what? If I turn this 25 lot, I'm gonna just do it. I don't gamble. I gamble very little. And so I had $100 in my pocket. So I turned the 25 lot. I write my name on it, put it in the bag. I didn't win. No shock there. It was. I remember because that's the only time I played, because I wasn't a gambler.
The one thing about I did for a long time. Look at it as, what am I making here? How does that translate outside these doors? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I never quite took my foot out of the past. When I was a phone clerk, I was also an out-trade clerk. And then I started picking up brokers and traders, and it got to the point where I was making like $50,000 a year doing out trades. And this was just a sidebar. And then my brokerage business got better and better. And I remember probably I made $250 in 1 year and $50 in out trades. And I'm like, do I want to quit out trades? And I'm like, no, because I don't know too many people making $50,000 a year outside of here. And I'm doing it, working an hour and a half a day.
Yeah.
So, but it got to the point where our markets got so busy that, out trade clerks would come in at like 7:15. I'd already be in the pit, and I had already resolved the out trade that they were on the other side of, and they would come up to me and say, "Hey," I would go, "Get the hell out of here! I've already resolved the out trade. Get here at 4 o'clock in the morning, like I did." And it just got too hectic because I'd be fumbling my deck, putting my buys and sells together, and I'd have to talk about out trades. So I ended up bringing in one of my best friends. He was not a trading floor guy at all. I trained him from scratch, my buddy Mike. And I handed him my business. He couldn't handle it all, which was fine because it took me years to get the experience, but I trained him for 6 months. He took like half the business, and he was making like $25,000 a year, which matched what he was making on his job. Yeah. So he was grateful. But so a lot of people say they don't have any regrets. I do. I don't let them undermine my present, but one of my regrets was that I didn't step off that top step as a broker and try trading. A broker's a really hard job. Mm-hmm. When the market doesn't make sense and the shit's hitting the fan, you cannot cross your arms and say, I'm going to wait for my opportunity. You are the shit that's hitting the fan, right? Yeah. But I'm like, man, I'm making a living better than like a brain surgeon right now. I'm not making as much as, Zeno over there or, Derby over there. But I had a family and I just said, I'm doing good. And it's not what you make, it's what you do with what you make, which you and I have talked about. So, and then I wanted to just circle back with the skills of being a floor trader and not transitioning into trading on the screen. And it's kind of like poker as well. Mm-hmm. You can be a world-class poker player and you're looking at the person, the people you're playing. That's the trading floor. Yep. You have a feel, there's an energy there, and you become an expert at it. And when you got to be fast, you're fast. But on the screen, it's like playing poker with somebody on a screen. Yep. Those skill sets, they're not transferable, most of them. So
right, yeah, and an example that I give people, and I tell them, look, it's not a perfect analogy, but I when they ask, well, why is trading on the screen so much harder than trading on the floor? I say, okay, here's an analogy I'm going to give. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be close. So Texas Hold'em. Let's take Texas Hold'em as an example. If you stood on the top step as a local, as a trader, you were pretty much guaranteed to get dealt pocket tens twice a day. Right, so you understand the analogy, right? You're going to get a couple trades a day,
100%,
that you're going to be able to work.
The edge.
But now you still got to manage it. You still got to play that hand well. You can't just okay, I'm going to throw them in and scratch the trade. So by standing in the pit, by being a pit trader, we talked about it very early on. The closer you are to the order flow coming in, the more often you're going to get dealt something good to work with that day. And you still got to manage it well. You still got to play the hand well. And then you also have the benefit of you're seeing the same, 150 people a day. You get to know who's, remember Pat Moe, when things are like you kind of knew, okay, the things are getting crazy right now. So, you knew that, okay, there could be an extreme, there could be an opportunity coming up here that this is going to push one way or the other too far. So you had the benefit of standing close to brokers and getting a nice good edge at least 2 times a day. And the busier the market, the more often you can kind of get that edge during the course of the day. And you had the benefit of seeing the same people every day. And you can kind of get a sense, and not just the people, but the flow and the feel, right? I mean, how many times, you can't really say, it's like, I think we're going higher here. I think we're going, and that's just a function of just that subconscious information just being fed all day long. Sort of what AI does nowadays, right? You just take information all day long. Like this just feels familiar. We probably got a couple ticks higher to go here. And there were multiple times where I don't know why, but I really feel like we're going to go a couple ticks higher. You put on a position or a big position, whatever it might be, and you play that out. So you had a few things going in your favor on the floor. None of that translates to the screen. Zero. You're not standing next to a broker to get an edge. You have no face to face, and maybe there's flow. Maybe if you stare at a screen long enough and watch the flow, you can kind of get a feel for the flow if you're going to be a scalper. Mm-hmm. But that's why I define it. We were good floor traders, mm-hmm. And I think there's a quantum leap from that to good trader.
When you walked off the floor, did you try screen trading or no?
Yes, and I still do trade a little bit. So initially, what I did, I started trading. First, I started trading from home. Then I set. Who did I clear? I can't remember who I cleared. They had a setup in Downers Grove, so I went there, and then I went back to the trading floor where I set up myself just on a screen just outside of the Eurodollar pit. And basically for 3 years, it was like make, lose, up, down. And I'm like, you know what? I need to just kind of get away from this. It just was, the thing that the words that kept coming to in my mind were, I'm wasting my life. Mm-hmm. I'm wasting my life. I need to move on. This will always be here in just in a new form, and I can revisit it down the line. And I've sort of circled back to it, and I'm actually enjoying it in a different way now. But I just needed to move on. Like I just need to start exploring other avenues of what I think life part two might be. I was only 36, 37, 30 years old, something like that. So yeah, 2000. So, and I had, so it was time to kind of move on and try some other things. There were a few things I tried right away. One of the things I thought I would like to do was be a personal financial advisor. I'm like, well, it's there's some overlap there. I reached out to a gentleman I knew. Our daughters went to school together, and so I went to work for him for a little while.
Which company?
It was North. We were an independent firm.
Okay,
It was not a big firm. It was a kind of a boutique type firm. North. I might have been North Point. I wrote down 3 different things. Well, let me also add, along the way, we'd accumulated a couple of rental properties.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, and another thing we did, my wife and I did, so in 2000, the story I'm about to tell, and I say this line over again, I'd rather be lucky than good all day long, because we got pretty lucky with some things we did. And my wife was, I credit my wife to saying, look, we need to pull the trigger on a couple of things. Just as, this would have been around 2009 or 10. So, the blood was in the streets, and whatnot. And we were exploring different things. My wife said, look, in case we're going to downsize, there's this house in Naperville, let's buy it, we can rent it out. And so we picked that house up and just converted that to a rental. We had already owned 2 properties in Southwest Michigan that we were renting out on a seasonal basis. So that we bought, going into 2003, 4, and 5. And then we had that property in Naperville. And then I was working at this investment firm, just not enjoying it at all. I had made the terrible mistake of buying into the building. That firm, as well as another firm, had bought a building in Warrenville, and they were looking for investors. And I threw my hat into the ring, kind of in desperation, like you're trying, because that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Making decisions based on, this worked before. And so I would not attribute it. I would almost attribute it to fear, like fear of the future. Like you're making bad decisions because you're afraid that nothing else is going to work, or but it's flavored with. It has an overtone of, I'm me and I've made stuff work before. So it's too. There's probably multiple things at work here, and none of them good. So I bought into this building, but one of the businesses that I made a list of like 3 or 4 businesses. One of them was a cleaning company. Because my folks had a rental property, and there was a cleaning service to clean, and it was husband and wife, and I just had a conversation with them one day, like, tell me about your business, and then you guys are making pretty decent money.
Was this a back program from cleaning your dad's office too, maybe?
Yeah. And so I was cleaning my dad's office twice a week back in the day, and then when my folks had the construction company, we were cleaning job sites. I was also looking for recurring revenue, right? I've played the fluctuation revenue long enough. I'm like, okay, I'm at a stage now. Let's look at the books. What do we need each month? Okay, this is doable basically. And so we've got a couple of rental properties. We'll bring that in. If I can, the investment advisory thing just blew up. The money I put in the building, bad mistake. But in the exit of it, I negotiated my first cleaning contract. I said, I'll get out. And I had to write a big fat check to get out of it. And I said, but I want the lifetime cleaning contract for this building. You cannot fire me. So my lawyer drew it up like, you cannot fire me. So we've got the lifetime cleaning. And I'll be brave like Jimmy. So that cost me, to get out of it, was just over $300,000 to get out of all that my total loss there. And to date, we probably made back a little over 100 on that. So, but that was my first cleaning contract. And that started so that was like, okay, I'm done with the investment advisory firm, because we all hate each other now, because there were 9 or 10 partners, lawsuits filed in between with everybody, just fighting and infighting. So like, okay, I'm out of there. Now I've got this cleaning company. And at right around the same time, so this is like 2009, 10-ish, my brother-in-law, retired sheriff, he had like 12 rental properties in Schaumburg. And we were over by his place, and he's telling me what the rent is that he's collecting on this place, but the prices had gone from like 200 down to like $50, but the rent barely moved. That sounds like an opportunity. I sold some Merck stock. We're sitting on that. I'm like, well, let's go. So we bought like 5 of those. So now I'm running this cleaning company, trying to hire crews. We're bringing people on there, and I'm working it. And I'm working days, nights there. I'm rehabbing these properties. I'm working day and night, but I'm enjoying it, right? I'm doing something. I'm productive again, because I just gone from basically, from 2005 to 2000, call it 8 or 9, just like very little productivity, not feeling good about things, but now I'm feeling good about doing work. I'm exhausted, but I'm building something new here. And I would guide. I sent this to you in a link. Conan O'Brien, not necessarily one of my favorite comedians, but I came across how you start going on a rabbit hole on the internet, and I came across his 2010 commencement speech to Dartmouth. It's 25 minutes long. The first 16 minutes is pure silliness. If you've been a trader, or if you have somebody that's as an adult, you've lost your career, you will cry during the last 8 minutes. He says some unbelievably profound things during those last 8 minutes that hit me square in the eyes, in a good way. And I'm going to read one of them because it was so profound to me. Now, again, Conan O'Brien, he got the job from Jay Leno for the Tonight Show, and then in a very public way, it was pulled out. The rug was pulled out from underneath him, and he was left without that job in something that in an area he thought he deserved. So he said this, and I wrote this down. I've read this time and again. Ultimately, I abandoned all preconceived perceptions of my career path and stature, and took a job on basic cable. How many times I've had to read that, because I've said, I would say to myself, do you know what I used to do? Do you know what I used to make?
That's the stature component. Right?
That's the stature. And I'm working nights but these were conversations I had. I was like, I'm building something new here. Just don't, forget about your stature. You're building something new here. And I think, can you say I don't have a big ego without having a big ego? I don't think I have a big ego, and I don't think I've ever been someone to have a big ego. But I think it might be egotistical to say something like that.
I just want to pause you there. Is this potentially one of the reasons why it's difficult for former floor guys to reinvent themselves? Is it the stature component?
Without a doubt, and yeah, you definitely, without a doubt. I think you're spot on, but I'm building something good here, and now we're going from 50,000 revenue to 100,000 revenue, then 100 to 150, then 150 to 200. I'm like, okay, but I'm working nonstop, and it's like you're trying to hire people on it, and because I didn't have a business degree, and I didn't know that the infrastructure you needed to have in place to build out a business, right? Hiring and secretary and proposals. So I'm doing everything, and I'm doing it at all times. And I'll tell you, this is a God story. I was hiring people on, losing them, and I'm driving home one day because I trained somebody on a building, the very first building, the building we just talked about. I'm like, if I can just get somebody at that building to take that off my plate, because I was doing that building like 2 or 3 days a week. If I can get that off my plate, that can start to free me up. I did have a couple other workers, but I needed somebody to take that building. So I trained this guy on a Wednesday. He looks like he's solid. He's going to take it. Great. He calls me up on Friday. Sorry, I can't. I'm not going to work. So I'm like, okay. So now it's Saturday morning. I'm up between 4 and 6 a.m. all the time, and I love it. Saturday morning, I get up. It's 4 o'clock. I go clean that building. I'm driving home, and I'm part praying, part complaining, saying, God, I can't do this anymore. I'm to the bone. I'm exhausted. Driving home, the building's probably about 7-8 miles away. I'm driving home on Ogden Avenue, and I see Dunkin' Donuts up ahead on my left. And I think my daughter would be so thrilled when she gets up, there's Dunkin' Donuts on the counter. It's a Saturday morning. I miss the entrance to Dunkin' Donuts, and I pull into the next building right next to it, and I pull around back. And what do I see? A guy with a backpack vacuum walking to his car. I roll my window down. I say, "Hey, my man, do you clean that office building?" "Oh, yeah. You looking for any more work?" "Oh, yeah. "Well, what's your name?" "It's Margarito." But she said, "But call me Mr. G." That was in 2011. He's been with me ever since. Within 6 months, Mr. G, Mr. G's wife, Mr. G's nephew, Mr. G's nephew's girlfriend, and Mr. G's nephew's girlfriend's friend. Okay, so 5 people came to work for me. And it just relieved the burden off me. And
things like that don't happen by accident, right?
That's why
you said it's a God story.
It was a God story because I missed the turn into Dunkin'. Had I turned into Dunkin' Donuts, I never would have saw the guy. Never would have saw him. I missed the turn. I saw Dunkin' Donuts. My daughter would love Dunkin' Donuts. Missed it, saw him, and yeah, he still works for me today. It took me a while to rebuild because the foundation was faulty, right? I didn't build the foundation, and there are still some cracks in the foundation. And the reality is, I'm kind of scaling out of the cleaning business now. I don't know if I was talking to you or somebody else. I'm at the point now where I'm letting anything small under a certain dollar amount per month. I'm letting that, if it dies, it dies. And I've got a guy out there working like, only bring me something above this per month. I don't want and because that's for the next new guy, right? Let the next new guy get that smaller stuff and grow his business. So let's not go after the business. Let's go after the business above a certain level. So, he's bird dogging that for me right now. I didn't want to leave that story out because that was such a God story for me.
That's awesome. So, we kind of have a crossover story. I went from the trading floor into the restaurant business, and it's because I just happened to walk into a new wine store, and I liked the concept. The owner was there. I said, "If you're going to, open up another one, I'm interested." He said, "Well, we're starting a restaurant here in Orland Park." He went in the back. He brought out the blueprints. Next thing you know, I'm writing a 6-figure check. And the restaurant was almost finished. We built from scratch. And I walked off the floor in August of 04 for the last time. So I call up the partners. I go, "You want a managing partner?" I know about food and wine. I was a McDonald's manager. I went to Hamburger U. I know systems. I know how to train people, work with people. So I went in the restaurant and followed the typical restaurant story. Partner stole the money. We go out of business. And so I lost a 6-figure investment, okay, like you did with the building. But then you spun something off of that turned out to be opportunity. Well, what happened with me is one of our best customers owned a real estate company, and he loved the way I managed people. And he kept saying, "I want to hire you away to be my sales director. I have 80-something realtors." I'm like, "I don't know anything about real estate." So the loss in the restaurant led to my real estate career.
Yeah.
And that guy wound up going out of business because it was like 07, 08 was right when that stuff crescendoed and the market crashed. But since then, all of those people that were like basically servers and bartenders that were in their 20s when I was in my 40s, they have all grown up and called me up to buy and sell houses, and I've more than made up what I lost in the restaurant. Yep. And that goes in my chapter of my book, Living and Learning, because they say you live and learn, but I don't believe we all live and learn. Most of us don't. And if you do live and learn, you may have a misplaced step here or there, but you're always moving in the right direction, right? So I wanted to share that with you. And then I wanted to touch on this. This is how I feel, and I wanted to compare it to how you feel. Making money on the trading floor, having a good day, like for a broker, surviving a day without an error. You'd huddle up with your clerks and, high five each other. You guys did awesome today. And you have a sense of satisfaction. But that to me was not as rewarding as helping somebody buy or sell a house, actually providing something to somebody, right? Because that world down there was, like you said, we're making money on fluctuations. I love the way you said that. So I didn't get a sense of like what I was doing was rewarding to me. How do you feel about what you did there versus the new adventures?
I'm gonna say that in 2 ways. When you clean your garage, how many times you go back and look at it? Because we just like to see the product, our work product, right? Whether it's cleaning a garage, whether it's painting a room, you just can't help it. You just keep going back and looking at it. Besides numbers on a statement, we didn't really have much as traders. Like, you can feel good, not that you can't feel good about or bad about what you've done, but there wasn't a tangible thing besides, numbers on paper. So, as providing a service to people, like right now. So we have on the rental property side, we have 10 rental properties, and I have long-term renters in there, and they, for lack of a better word, I think they really respect and appreciate me because I am providing them something. I provide a good home at a fair price, and they call me with a problem. It's fixed in 48 hours. So there is something very rewarding in that, in providing a service to people. The same on the cleaning side. Knowing that I've got people that are working, that I'm paying, and they're providing a service to somebody else. I say, this is a line I stole. Excellence honors God and inspires people. Excellence honors God and inspires people. And I tell my people that, look, and they're all of my people they have a belief in God.
Say that one more time.
Excellence honors God and inspires people. And I stole that line. I'm not going to.
I love that.
So, but it's.
I'm stealing it from you.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you bring excellence to what you do, you're honoring God and you're inspiring people. People are going to wonder, like, oh, maybe it opens the door for other conversations, for bigger conversations. I think I try to live on that training floor, but yeah, there is definitely more opportunities to have a sense of satisfaction and serving other people in this world, in this current career and existence than there was then. Not to say, again, there was certainly opportunities that we had with supporting various ministries and whatnot, but very seldom would you wouldn't necessarily see the tangible outcome of whatever check you wrote. It was just you just knew you were giving to this particular cause or this particular building or whatever it might be. So it was a little, there was a little bit of a disconnect there, but I fully trusted, vetted and trusted those entities that we were giving to. So opportunities existed then. I think it's more tangible now.
Yeah. So I want to rewind the tape real quick. I think I told you this on the phone, and this is related to energy and like energies attract and stuff. I didn't know you on the trading floor, and I don't even know if we ever said hello to each other, which is funny how the trading floor works because we were on a diagonal to each other. We could see each other all day long, right? Yeah. I might have seen you say sold to Mike Fahey, because somewhere you jogged a memory. We look at each other all day, and part of our game is sizing people up. Now, you were at a different pit, but we look at each other all day. You start to learn people's mannerisms, and you learn all their tells and quirky habits. And I used to look at you, and I'm like, he's not like everybody else. I could tell, like, you weren't as boisterous as some of the guys around you. You laughed and stuff like that. You always had a game face on, right? And I noticed that about you, and I'd see you walk in the halls and stuff like that, and I could tell, you were fit and you worked out, and I noticed that, and it always stuck in my head. So when we first talked on the phone, I said that to you. I said, you just seemed like you were very disciplined and structured and stuff like that. And I was the same way, right? Work out every day and whatever. And I just wanted to say that to you, on our podcast here, that everything I've learned about you today confirms all of that stuff. You were all of those things, but I saw that in you.
I'm going to go ahead and take that as a compliment.
Of course, absolutely.
But yeah, I did tell you this when you told me that. There are just odd things that stick out in my mind. And a guy named Carlos Barba in my high school yearbook, he was a year behind me. He wrote this in my yearbook, and for some reason, it just stuck out at me. He said, "Bill, for the first year I knew you, I didn't know you could talk." He said, "Now I can't shut you up." So I think I'm a very utilitarian kind of person, meaning I don't like wasting words. I don't like wasting energy. I remember when we were moving from the lower trading floor to the upper trading floor, there were all sorts of meetings going on because they were going to reconfigure the pit, this, that, and the other. And Matt Gohovic, remember Matt Gohovic?
Of course.
He said something.
Talk about a boisterous guy.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, just a riot. He said something in one of the meetings, and he said something about, I've taken time to develop these relationships. And when he said that, I'm like, what does that mean? What do relationships have to? Because again, I viewed the pit as a very utilitarian place. I viewed our role as locals as, look, we were here to provide liquidity in a marketplace. Our job is to get these orders processed, to provide liquidity, and for the bigger picture, I felt like what our role was, and I'm probably going 3 levels too high here. Liquidity translates to lower interest rates for the end users of our market. That translates to hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars saved for the end users, the hedgers. And I kind of like that was our role. And what does relationship have to do with that? And I didn't recognize my stern look, my lack of interacting with people was just sort of a naiveness that I had, that relationships do matter, not in a schmoozy kind of way. I don't mean it like that, but I mean just a recognition that, if you're having kind of good conversations with people and you can loosen up, and my wife would be the first one to tell you that I need to loosen up. It just makes the whole process go a little smoother and might ultimately lead to better things down the way. So I just remember Matt making that comment, and that was like the first time it dawned on me, like, what does relationships have to do with what we do here? And then it's just like, well, okay, maybe I do need to sort of loosen. And I probably didn't loosen up at all. But it's like anything else. I mean, I think the guys sort of in my little section, those are the guys that I got to know and opened up with and whatnot, and probably was more open and jovial with them than most others. I am self-aware enough to recognize that I can come across as a little stern, as a little less than friendly, but that's not. I don't think that's who I am.
Right, I get the same thing.
Yeah,
I'll be walking down the street and I've had people say to me, "Look at you, Mr. Serious," and I'm like, I'm just walking down the street here, right? Yeah. It's a look, but it's an energy thing.
Yeah.
All right, so I like to ask this question on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. How happy and fulfilled are you?
I'm going to answer that this way. Did you ever see the movie Cheaper by the Dozen? If you
not for a long time, okay, so I wouldn't be able to recall.
So it's with Steve Martin and he's got 12 kids and they've got this great relationship with everybody. Then things kind of go off the rail, and at the end they all come back and everything's great again. And they're sitting around. The final scene is them sitting around the Thanksgiving table, and there's the camera's sort of out to here, and Steve Martin's at the head of the table. The camera's out to here, and it's just sort of panning in. There's all this chaos. And it's kind of narrowing in on Steve Martin. And Steve Martin he's got this look on his face, and the camera looks at him, and he just kind of looks up, and he's like, that's how I'm going to answer that. Like, that's kind of like where I feel like I am right now in life. Like, yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's a good answer without answering the question. Yeah. I always tell people after they give me a number, let's say they say an 8, I go, well, what would make it a 10? And for me, the whole game is being a 10 all the time. And I think if you really are embracing gratitude, like if you're doing it the right way, we could talk about reframe, it should be a 10 all the time. Even with problems, when problems come, we know like we're going to be on a steep learning curve right here. We're going to be dealing with stuff that we haven't been dealing with, and we're going to figure stuff out. Like, so I always say it's a 10. For me, it's a 10 because I'm on the journey already. Whether I get to where I want to be or not it doesn't even matter. Mm-hmm. It's this, what did we call it before? Contentment versus ambition. I'm very content. Yeah. So for me, it's a 10 all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you answered it pretty much as a 10. My friend Bill, do you want to cover anything else? Because do you have anything left?
No, I mean, I really just really enjoyed the time we had, the questions you asked.
Awesome. I have to do this, and it's my show, so I'm going to do it. But this is one of the last. This is the last page in your book, okay? And I'm going to read it. It says, "The joys in the journey. I have a framed picture on the wall of my office of a little boy riding his tricycle in the middle of a long desert road that leads to the mountains. The picture is taken from behind the child so that we, too, can see the long road ahead of him. Dressed in his pajamas, we get the sense that the little boy is completely content to be on the tricycle or the tricycle, simply enjoying the ride on his long journey. I wrote next to the picture, the joys in the journey. The vast majority of the hours of our lives will be spent on journeys toward our goals. Paradoxically, when those moments come where we realize that we are very near the long-awaited destination and our goal is about to be realized, we begin to think about the next step, the next goal. If we are not careful, we will miss out only the joy of the journey, but also the joy of the long desired destination. And that, my friend, is living in the present. Like Ferris Bueller says, sometimes you got to stop and look around, and that is like true wisdom. So, my dear friend, it was awesome having you on here. One of my favorite guests. You are super smart, and I didn't have to really say anything, which is good. So we're going to conclude here. Thank you, Bill Provenzano, for coming on. To all my friends out there, thank you for watching this podcast. And remember, there is a warrior inside us all. Take care of everybody.
Thank you, Frank. And everybody be well.
Awesome.